Those who have worked at Disney World, what behind the scenes stories do you have that the public doesn't see? As a character, you are supposed to throw up in your mask if you are sick. Taking it off is not an option. You cover one eye with your hand and raise the other arm in the air to alert maintenance that you are not well. Also, if there is another character, same as you cannot, under any circumstances, be seen with them. You also must take a course to match signature style for autographs. Does it count if it's a different amusement park? The one I worked at has one of those sudden drop rides. A coworker found a single screw on the ground and they closed down the ride for days as they went over every inch of the ride. Turns out it was a screw that could have led to a seat opening and rider falling out if it hadn't been discovered. At Disney parks, all the screws on the rides have paint on them, and where they're attached is a seal, so they can see if the screw is loose or not. At least with that, they could tell if the screw belonged to the ride or not. If you hear an announcement over the park-wide sound system looking for a specific person, it is something very important. Announcements like that have a chain of approval before Disney will allow the magic illusion to be broken. But it's not always bad news, like informing families of a death. I've done several park announcements to find someone to inform them an organ donation was matched. A medical courier was on their way to Orlando and they needed to get to the hospital ASAP. I worked a cash register in Tomorrowland. A guy had a heart attack and died about 10 feet from me. I called it in as soon as I saw, but they already knew about it. I went on break shortly afterward and saw the family literally behind the scenes, crying their eyes out. That never happens. Guests are never allowed behind the scenes, except when somebody dies, I guess. Really kind of heartbreaking. On a positive note, they all got lifetime passes. I don't work there, but had a relevant experience. The stories about underground passageways and secret police are 100% true. Was in the Magic Kingdom for a band trip in high school, hanging out with a few friends. One guy, we'll call him Jack, decided it'd be a good idea to shoplift some keychains from one of the stores. This being Disney, there were probably 50 different security cameras that saw this. A few minutes later we are walking through a crowded area when someone gave me a flat tire and we stop. Two big guys are behind us and quietly tell Jack that he needs to go with them and tell the rest of us to let our band director know he needs to get in touch with security. They walk Jack over behind one of the stores where there's a cast members only door and disappear behind it. Later Jack told us they took him underground where he sat in a security room for the rest of the day where he was charged with shoplifting. They threw the book at him. They don't tolerate that shit at all. He got a huge fine and had to do community service in Florida. We lived in the Northeast. In retrospect, I have a huge amount of respect and a small amount of terror for how Disney handled the situation. They were incredibly subtle with the whole flat tire thing and how they quietly avoided making a scene. People walking past us had no idea what was going on. I know it sounds silly, but that experience alone probably helped me understand how terrifying and effective secret police in places like the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany were better than anything we ever learned in class. I have an autistic cousin and while we were riding the Pirates of the Caribbean ride it broke down. My cousin flipped out and Disney security literally appeared out of the walls. They took us into the back tunnels and into a freight elevator. Before we knew it, we're back outside. They were awesome in helping calm him as well. The Tinkerbell that ziplines from the castle each night is a nation dude. I worked at Club Disney for the brief time it was open. We had codes we used on the radio headsets that were coordinated with character names. For instance, code blue meant there was blood that needed to be cleaned up immediately. One day, I'm taking a stroll around the club to check on things when I spot a small boy about 2 years old taking a massive dump right in the middle of the play area. He sees me, starts to cry, and runs away with no clothing on the lower half of his body. I get on the radio and can't think of what to say as we hadn't discussed a code for human faces in the play area and naked kid running around. So I just called. I have a code poo situation in the play area and piglets on the loose. I used to be a cast member at the Disney store in my local mall. We were required to greet everyone within 10 seconds of them entering the store. There used to be a game online that kids would play about getting to the back of the store, grabbing a stuffed animal from the plush mountain, and get back up front before getting greeted. I saw this one teenager run across the store and dive headfirst in the mountain of stuffed animals, only to quickly find out that they were on risers. He was taken away on a stretcher, but ended up being fine. And yes, I greeted him while he was in midair, so he lost the game. Former WDW cast member. I swear most of my crazy stories come from working there. Things I've seen. More than once, adult drop trouser and take a dump next to a line of people and walk off laughing. A mother climb a tree and swing down in the middle of another family's meet and greet with beast. She didn't want to wait in line. 3 people in wheelchairs in the same tree at another time. I have no idea. A man tried to swim in Cinderella's moat during fireworks. I was guarding the ropes. I tackled him. Snow White being thrown over the shoulder of a drunk man in Epcot in an attempt to carry her away. A Brazilian tour group beat the crap out of Donald Duck. Nights of Joy is hell on earth. The park is open to Christian youth groups and has Christian rock bands perform. During these nights extra staff is put on and extra security because there is sex and drugs and theft happening around every corner. My managers were preparing us for it. They said if you see a bush rustle, kids are having sex behind it. The bathrooms have to be checked every 5 minutes, and any ride that goes dark for more than 3 seconds will have randy teenagers whipping their junk out. Those nights. Those terrifying nights. On our family trip to Disney World, I was leaning over a railing looking down into some water. A few unreachable feet below I spot a tiny 5 feet to 2 feet alligator. Being from Africa and relatively unfazed with a slightly sharp swimming lizard, thought nothing of it. I called my mother over and said, look, an alligator. How cool. Sweet Jesus, was this a mistake? Not 2 seconds later, ears everywhere, man. A staff member was looking over the railing whispering on the radio. All hell broke loose in the most hushed professional way ever. We were escorted away on a golf cart and a huge section of the park was cordoned off. We were taken to a room where they were very apologetic for our negative experience and offered us a free day VIP, the works. So we said a big thank you and took what was offered. In future I will be smuggling other small harmless creatures in for free stuff. I also got stuck on the Big Thunder Mountain ride in Paris. That was handled in a much more French way. Jesus de Soleil blows smoke in face. I'm a former Disney World Resort employee. I worked as a concierge at a deluxe resort, but sometimes had shifts at a value/moderate level resort. I came across a lot of famous and crazy people. Let me know if you have any questions. Government officials, including POTUS, normally stay at the Contemporary because it is the most secure resort. Celebrities want to stay in Cinderella's castle, but Disney has denied some of them based on how messy they have left hotel rooms before. Cast members see lots of famous people every day, all the time, bragging about who you know to try to get free stuff from people. Getting paid minimum wage won't get you too far. On the flip side, Disney gives out a lot of money if you complain enough to the right cast member at your resort, especially when staying at a deluxe resort. There is a good chance you will get money back. Disney has a huge budget for this. When the Polynesian was under major construction, just coming off this now, they give out a lot of money to angry guests who didn't do research ahead of time. If you are mean to cast members, you better believe we are putting notes on your reservation. Disney has a lot of computer systems, and they track crazy guests' behavior. When you come up to the desk and scan your magic band, I will be warned if you have yelled or been out of line to another cast member. And that is across the board. All the Disney resorts use the same system. As for craziest stories, I have been asked where to get drugs, where to go to get prostitutes, and I also had a guest that ended up being a con woman. I have also had guests pass me their phone number. I can only imagine how bad it is for the princesses. You definitely learn a lot about people and grow thick skin working for Disney. I think that experience helped me get my current job, but also allowed me to have newfound respect in what may be the most difficult customer service industry around. A friend of mine told me that the rules for workers at the European Disneyland were so strict that they took to calling it Mouse-Auschwitz. When management got wind of this, they were told that anyone found using that name again would be fired. Apparently it was only a couple of hours before they were calling it Duck. Everyone in the call centers is given a stage name, so no two agents have the same name to the guests. Most unique stage names I can remember: Cotton, Casper, Arizona, Lucinda. When you're in training they give you a selection of like 20 names to choose from, so you better hope you're one of the first ones to pick, so you can get a normal name, and not get stuck with Cotton FFS. I worked on the Great Movie Ride in Hollywood Studios for a while, and I can tell you all 22 minutes of your friendly tour guide speech is scripted to the very last letter. You get 3 days to learn your whole monologue and all of the speed / control / stops / goes of the actual ride before going live as a tour guide. Most of those 3 days is spent in a room with your trainer reciting your script until you get every word right. If you accidentally say the word okay instead of alright, you start over from the beginning. Most tedious 3 days of my life. There's also one button on every car that, despite being really close to buttons you have to touch all the time, if pushed gets you fired immediately. Compulsory. I never worked for Disney, but a friend did. Disney security listens to all Disney radio channels at all times for any distress call or other issue that is relevant to security. My friend, we'll call him Daniel because that's his name, worked for Disney World in Florida once. He worked in one of the resorts. I'm not quite sure what his job actually was, but his radio call sign was Movie Runner. He was walking between resorts one night, and near a pool he was cornered by a mama bobcat. Usually not a huge deal, because the bobcat will eventually realize the person is not a threat, but he radioed the resort to let them know that he was being cornered by a bobcat. Next radio transmission. Without missing a beat, Movie Runner, this is Disney Security Base. We understand you are being cornered by a bobcat. Please remain calm. We have 2 units approaching your location. Eat at 2 minutes. Please acknowledge. Over. Most likely get buried at this point, but I remember once I was leaving the park. You know how it gets ridiculously crowded at the exits when the park is shutting down. I got elbowed in nose, got a bloody nose. All of a sudden the staff swooped in and took me to the underground tunnels, then to a golf cart that brought us to our car. Definitely a quick exit. My first day as a CP, college program intern, working at the Magic Kingdom in January 2005. After all the tours and fun stuff and exploring the tunnels, I had a meal at the Mousquetaria cafeteria and had my eye on Cinderella and some other princess, maybe Snow White, while I ate. They were mad. After the meal, I went out to wait for the bus back to the parking lot around the same time they left. Now keep in mind, characters aren't allowed to keep their costumes on as soon as they're off stage, so the princesses typically walked around in tank tops and short pajama shorts, but the with wig and full makeup. So I'm waiting for the bus and Cinderella and Snow White are full on shit talking some slut who slept with one of their boyfriends while chain smoking. Turns out, they were talking about a girl who played Ariel. Seriously? 21-year-old me was in total shock, because it was my first day and knew it could only get better from there, and it did. Like the time Aladdin and Peter Pan were making out on one of the tables in the same Mousquetaria, or the time I saw Mickey Mouse give someone the finger underground directly after a parade. It's hot in those costumes. She was probably justified. Or the time a different Cinderella got really pissed because Paris Hilton was visiting the park that day and didn't go to see her. On the bus back to the lodge she was like, I'm fucking Cinderella. Why wouldn't she come find me? Oh man. Good times. Good times. Not an employee, but I have an interesting story about Disney. When I was 7, I went to Disney World. The third night we were there, I rolled out of my bed and cut my forehead on the nightstand. My mom came over to comfort me, not knowing I was bleeding quite profusely. She turned the light on when I wouldn't stop crying. She said it looked like a murder had taken place. Paramedics were called, and the room was swarming with what I can only assume were Disney employees. After I was evaluated and patched up, I was taken to the gift shop around 2 AM with my mom and an employee. I got to choose 3 toys at no cost to my family. It was pretty incredible to be in the completely abandoned gift shop and being told I could have anything. When we returned back to the room 25 minutes later, all the blood was cleaned up, guardrails were put on my bed, and a large basket of candy and other sweets were left on a table. Disney doesn't play around with customer service.